Okay. Well, good evening, buenas tardes, everyone, and welcome to today's City Council study session here in the City of Moreno Valley. Moreno Valley Community Services District, City as successor agency for the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Moreno Valley, Moreno Valley Housing Authority, Moreno Valley Public Financing Authority, and the Board of Library Trustees. The City Council receives a separate stipend for CSD meetings. I now call this meeting to order on October 10th, 2023 at 6:02 p.m. And would anyone like to volunteer for the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, and so we will do the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Mayor Pro Tem Delgado.
Please join me in placing your right hand over your heart.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Baca, Santa Cruz.
Here.
Councilmember Marcus.
Here.
Councilmember Bernard.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Delgado.
Here, ma'am.
And Mayor Cabrera.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Staff introductions, please.
Jane Halstead, City Clerk.
Paul Bradvica, Deputy City Clerk.
Colin Kirkpatrick, Assistant City Attorney.
Mike Lee, City Manager.
Brian Mohan, Assistant City Manager, Chief Financial Officer, City Treasurer.
Michael Lloyd, Assistant City Manager for Development.
Diana Rocket, Emergency Management Division Manager.
Thank you very much, staff. At this time, now we will move to public comments on matters on the agenda only. Pursuant to the Brown Act, public comments shall be limited to only those items that are on our study session agenda this evening. Each person shall be allowed a total of 3 minutes to comment on each item on the agenda. A reminder that the city is currently offering Spanish translation services. If anyone is interested in this feature, la ciudad actualmente ofrece servicios de traducción al español. Si alguien está interesado, por favor, nos avisan. Finally, in order to preserve the meeting decorum, council and staff will not respond during public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any requests to speak?
We have 2 requests to speak and 1 statement. We have a statement from Roy Bleckert. He wanted the council know that he supports item A2, but he won't be in attendance tonight to speak about it.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And at this time, we can go ahead and call up our 2 speakers.
Okay, the first one is Fred Bonuelos, followed by Pete Bleckert.
Hello, everyone. It's been a minute since I've been here. Hey, so I'm not sure how I'm going to comment on A2, but I'll tell you about my experience with these different meetings. Recently, there was a Val Verde Unified School Board meeting, and you guys also had a meeting that night. I felt it was very important that I was at Val Verde, so I couldn't come to this meeting. It's very hard for me to be in, like, we'll say 3 places at the same time. I'm not in the Moreno Valley Unified School District, but this is my city, Moreno Valley, so I feel it's I need to be involved with the kids that are in that district. Tonight there's a meeting there. It seems like it's very packed there. I might go there after here. I was kind of disappointed that I wasn't able to be here when Ed announced his retirement. I wish I would have been here to shake his hand then. Congratulations on your retirement. Yeah, it's hard to be in 3 places at the same time. Sometimes it seems like I don't get to address my government officials because it's hard to be in 3 places at the same time. Hopefully, after I hear the presentation, I'll feel a lot better of what's going to happen. But that's one of the main reasons that I don't come to the meetings anymore. I watch them. And, I'm giving kind of like hints to, I think here I said, you guys make sure that the microphones are on when you say the Pledge of Allegiance, because I couldn't hear it when I'm at home, stuff like that. Val Verde, making sure that they turn on the microphones when they're making comments, because when I'm at home, I can't hear it. It just makes it very hard when the meetings are on the same night. So hopefully you guys will do something to change that. I'm sure there's more people that feel the same way. They just can't be here. like, Roy's at the Moreno Valley Unified School District meeting. And yeah, I think that's it for my comments tonight. I haven't said this in a while. Moreno Valley first. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
The final speaker is Pete Bleckard.
I'm here to support changing your time to a different date so everybody can go to the school board meetings and attend here. Like I say, Roy's over at the school board meeting right now, and he supports this item too. He went to kindergarten through the 12th grade, and he got out of 12th grade when he was 16 years old because he passed all the tests. So he was a lot ahead of his time. So he's very impressed with going to school board meetings. I think, I tried to get that done way back when the snake lady was here, but she didn't want nobody to be here because she was on the school board before she came here, and she didn't want everybody going over there pestering him and pestering us. So this has been going on. We've been asking to do this way back when the city got started, after the recall. After the first recall, everybody was up here, Ray Hossman, myself, a whole lot of other people trying to get this done. But when you have the hate sitting up there in front that don't want to hear from us, and there's a few, there's a lot more of you that don't want to hear from us than do. So anybody says you don't, so don't, be honest about it, be honest about it. Judy was very honest about it, and Denise Lanning was very honest about it, and Dickie Stu. When I'd get up here and talk, he would take that's before you had computers, he'd take his book up and do this to it in front of me, You couldn't see it because the camera wasn't there. So, you have hate there by me, so I know how it goes. Ray Hossman was here. He got the same treatment. So, you weren't born as dictators. So, it ought to be that way. So, just like the whole deal which I talked about last week about not letting the pro tem when somebody goes out of town. That's the first time for that. But you won't let us talk on the telephone to you. That's a little bit of hate speech there.
That concludes public comment, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So with that, we will now move to item A on our agenda. We have 2 items of business, and we'll start off with the first one, which is the Office of Emergency Management and Volunteer Services Division, and we have a report from the Fire Department. I think, is this Diana Rocket? Excellent.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and city leaders. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the Office of Emergency Management and Volunteer Services and how we engage and help our community and our city departments prepare. Again, my name is Diana Rocket, and I have the pleasure of serving as your division manager for the Fire Department Office of Emergency Management. So just to get started, just a little bit about our division. We are small but mighty. We are currently a staff of 4, hoping to grow that over time. I wanted to point out that we have a management assistant, a senior admin assistant, and a program specialist, and you'll notice the bilingual component. 2 of our staff members are bilingual in Spanish, and 1 is bilingual in Cantonese. So when I talk about the whole community and how emergency management engages them, I just want you to be mindful of those services that we're able to provide. So before I jump into really what OEM does as a city department, I just want to stop momentarily and just talk about what emergency management is. Oftentimes people will say, I hear you talking about emergency management, and they think that really it's just emergency response. And really we are so much more than that. And so I just wanted to kind of point that out. And we'll talk about the 4 phases in just a moment, but most people know us as disaster coordinators, but what they don't know is how much we do for the city and our residents before disaster strikes. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. So moving on, when we talk about the OEM mission, really it's about all phases, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, but educating, training, and engaging not just the city departments and our residents, but it's also very much about our faith-based nonprofits, Because when disaster strikes, we can't do this alone. Government cannot do this alone. It requires partnerships at all levels, from volunteers to boots on the ground to first responders and again, the whole community. So, you know, in support of city leadership, innovative, looking at new ways to engage the community when it comes to disaster preparedness and response. So what I want to do now is just take a moment to talk about really what is the backbone of emergency management, which is the 4 phases. As you see there, mitigation, preparation, response, and recovery. We do everything covering all of those phases because it takes work before, during, and after disaster strikes to be successful. So in the mitigation phase, our office is responsible for the local hazard mitigation plan, which really is a key and foundational item to the city because that plan identifies what we're doing, the efforts that we're taking to try to mitigate impacts of disaster before they occur. We aren't responsible for the physical mitigation efforts. That's what your other city departments are for, Public Works and things like that. But what we do is bring all of those different departments together, identify what those efforts are so that there is a cohesive and planned effort. So that's really a lot of what we do in that phase. Moving on to the next phase, preparation. This is really where most people in the community probably know us from the most. Our community outreach efforts, with the additional staff that we have, we're able to engage the community much more than we ever have been. And so we're very proud of that. The partnership building, I really can't say enough about that and how important that is at all levels. And running, of course, the citywide safety program. Moving into, before I move on, let me just take a moment. Recently, the council was nice enough to acknowledge us for National Preparedness Month and presented us with a proclamation, so we thank the council for that. And so in return, I just wanted to highlight a little bit of what we did during National Preparedness Month. We do these efforts year-round, but really the efforts during September this year were focused on seniors. And the senior center was a focus for us. We focused on senior housing communities. We went out and did community outreach at some local stores and really just focused on getting the message out about preparedness. So moving on to the next phase, the response phase. And again, this is probably where most of you know us from. As I said, many think of us as disaster coordinators, but really there's so much more to that. It's the resources, acquiring resources, deploying the resources, tracking the resources, the personnel, making sure that we have enough personnel to continue continuity of operations, continuity of government. Business still has to run, but the disaster has to be mitigated and handled as well. So we coordinate all of that. So just to highlight here, the Emergency Response Force, this is an elite volunteer force that the city has had in place for at least 12 years that I know of. And we've spent significant significant efforts this last year to enhance and increase our outreach to recruit new volunteers. And we have been very successful in that. In the last year, we have recruited 12 elite volunteers through our various six programs that we offer. So we're very proud of that. And the city is one of very few that have a response force like this for volunteers. So we're very proud of that program, and it's a critical element to what we do here at the city. And then finally, moving into the final phase, recovery. The key here is really trying to work, again, at all levels, not just of government, but really from boots on the ground, you know, our stakeholders, to restore to pre-disaster conditions. And in a significant event, I mean, these efforts can take years. We just had recently the Tropical Storm Hillary. Folks in the desert are still and will be recovering from that for a very long time. But that's what we do here is we try to connect the affected to the resources, whatever that may be, regardless of their status. And then, of course, after action reporting, which is huge for us. That's where we identify what worked well, what can we do better. So that kind of touches on the 4 basic phases, really the backbone of emergency management, what we do and how we support our city departments and our city residents and businesses, faith-based, all of our stakeholders. So with that, just a couple of pictures. I would like to highlight in the upper left there, you see that is one of our emergency response force volunteers. Her name is Christina. She's been with us, I believe, for about 12 years, and she is our 2023 Volunteer of the Year. And here you can see her. This was at the El Grito event where we focused heavily on efforts to the Spanish community. And as you can see there, she's engaging and doing some hands-only CPR training, which you often see us doing in the community, along with other training. So with that, any questions for me?
Thank you so much for that presentation. Really appreciate it. And I know you and your team are at, I think, all of our events. We definitely see you everywhere. So thank you again for that. At this time, we'll open up the floor for any questions or comments. First up, we have Mayor Pro Tem.
Excellent presentation. Thank you for that, and thank you for bringing that topic to the study session. How closely do you work with county emergency services?
So I engage with county emergency management as our operational partners nearly daily. I actually came from that institution, so from that department, so after 17 years. So we are very closely connected. I'm also daily connected to surrounding city emergency managers, managers within special districts, our tribal partners. It is really, truly a collaborative community, so we engage often.
Awesome. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you. Next up, Councilmember Santa Cruz.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It was awesome. I think we're aware of a lot of the programs that you're doing, but this was a great presentation to all wrap it up. Regarding your emergency response force, do you meet regularly? Is it the annual CERT trainings that you, like, what does this elite volunteer force do on?
Volunteer force specifically, as you saw, is for 6 focus areas. It's community outreach. We have a few that we are training to be instructors that assist us in CERT, first aid, CPR, stop the bleed, different trainings that we offer. But they also do response, meaning that if our first responders are in the field, as the incident grows in size and scope and complexity, it could be a time before larger resources get out there to support them. So what the emergency response force do is they go out and support in that first 12 to 18 hour period until larger resources can get on site, command posts can be mobilized and things like that. So they do firefighter rehab, they can hand out sustenance until, again, until larger help arrives. So they do a lot of different things. Community engagement, several of our response force volunteers speak various languages, so they help us in that area of community outreach and engagement in the various communities throughout the city. So lots of different things that they do. One of the things that we will be adding is other elements, emergency operations, and ways that they can engage. So currently we have, I want to say we have about 22 active members, and these folks are available, as the mayor mentioned. We are at every city event. Sometimes we do first aid support in case there's any injuries, but others we do also community engagement, and that they are at every one of those events with us. So anybody that's interested in more information, they can go to moval.org/OEM, and there's more information there.
Alrighty. Next up, we have Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you for being here today. Very useful information. On your one of your things up here, you had grants. What type of grants do you apply for?
So there are 2 specific grants that we get every year. The first one is Homeland Security grant funding. That's a federal to state to county to city pass down grant. And that helps us provide personnel time to support community training and outreach events. The other grant that we get is Emergency Management Performance Grants, which gets us each year about $27,000 that we're able to use to purchase emergency response related equipment.
Okay. Does other cities or the county, when they have grants for this type of operation, does the city, our city, get any type of financing assistance from them?
That's where these come from. Both of these grants come through the federal government. They pass through the state passes funds to the county, and then the county ultimately passes it to us. So yes, we get these funds every year.
Okay, thank you.
And we also constantly monitor for other grant opportunities through our grants, partnering with our grants unit.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Now, before we conclude this item, are there any further questions or comments from the council? Okay, I don't see any.
Mayor, if I might add, just wanted to mention one additional aspect that the CM's office has spearheaded since we've come out of the pandemic. Due to the pandemic, obviously, OEM wasn't able to do all these trainings, and not only trainings to our residents, but more importantly, trainings to our staff. Whether they were fire drills, whether they were first aid, CPR, active shooter trainings, and this and that. So there's been a big push since we've come out of the pandemic and OEM's been back open, in which the CM's office has required the staff members to go through CERT training, to go through a Stop the Bleed training and so forth. And the big push is due to one of the things that OEM had mentioned. So Diana mentioned that it will take a while for first responders to get to any one location during a disaster. So the more staff that actually know the various trainings on first aid, Stop the Bleed, and so forth, we're able to take care of ourselves before first responders come in. So you saw some slides with backpacks and so forth. All of our staff have those backpacks with supplies and so forth in our offices. So we're able to take care of ourselves until first responders do show up during a disaster. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the additional information there, Brian. Appreciate that. Now, seeing no further questions or comments here, thank you again, Diana. Really appreciate the report there. Appreciate you being here with us. And at this time, we'll go ahead and move to our second item on the agenda, which is council meeting, regular time and place. And we have a presentation from the city manager's office.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, MPT, and Council. This one was an interesting, I guess, study. I did a lot of research, and so I'm interested to see what you guys think about this particular presentation. But again, there was a motion and a request in a previous council meeting to come with a study session on the regular date and time and place of not only our city, but of other entities that are within our city limits. So with that being said, let's go back to what is currently codified with the city. So basically our municipal code, chapter 2.04, which is listed as or titled as council, there are two subsections that identify the time and the place of our city council meetings. 2.04.010 basically states that commencing with the first regular meeting or study session after the effective date of this chapter, whichever first occurs, then the meeting scheduled for the city council shall be as set by resolution of the council. So you'll see that there's been multiple ordinances since the city was adopted, and there's been multiple resolutions. And I will specifically go into the resolutions that identify what we're currently codified under. And obviously the place of the city council meeting is 2.04.020, and it basically states that that would also be set by resolution. And the current resolution that we're guided by right now obviously states that it would be City Hall. So when you look at the Policy 101A rules and procedures for council meetings, there's also a codification there that the time and place of our regular meetings shall be held on the first and third Tuesdays of each month at 6 p.m. And the location would be City Council Chamber at City Hall, which is also specified by resolution of the City Council. So there's codification of the first and third Tuesday. And so what I did is I took a look at that, and then I did some research on the organizations in which certain residents have mentioned are conflicting times and dates. Obviously, Moreno Valley Unified School District and Val Verde Unified School District. So in looking at those and looking at their current meetings, now we're talking about regular meetings at this particular point in time. So I just stated that based on codification that I just read, our city council meetings are the first and third Tuesday of each month, and they start at 6. Looking at the codifications under the Moreno Valley Unified School District Board bylaws, their meetings are to be held on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m. Looking at Val Verde Unified School District's bylaws, their board meetings only occur on the second Tuesday of each month, 6 p.m. So from a regular meeting perspective, our residents shouldn't have any conflict with any of these jurisdictions and entities. So I then said, well, gee, what else could potentially be causing this? And so I went to closed session to take a look at when closed sessions occurred, and all of them are on the same day of their regular scheduled meetings, and they all occur prior to 6 p.m. So it's not closed sessions. So then I went to study sessions and take a look at if it could be the study sessions that are in conflict. City council study sessions, based on our codification, are on the second Tuesday of each month, 6 p.m. Board study sessions for Moreno Valley Unified School District, there are no specific days for study sessions. They can occur whenever called. So in essence, they become very similar to special meetings from a codification standpoint. Val Verde Unified School District has no mention of study sessions, and they just do random special meetings. So then I thought, well, there couldn't be that many study sessions of any one entity other than ours, because ours are codified for the second Tuesday of each month. So I went through and took a look at their bylaws. I looked at their calendars for their meetings and so forth. And what I found is when we look at Val Verde specifically, Val Verde actually has a codification that they were supposed to be on the second Tuesday of each month, one meeting. Well, when we look at that, their bylaw 9930 and bylaw 9931, which identifies their date and times and location, their bylaw clearly states second meeting or second Tuesday of each month. But when I look at this particular calendar, the calendar in which the resident who made comment that there's a meeting tonight, October 10th isn't even shown as a meeting date. And when I look at this particular calendar, there's actually 10 out of 12 months in which Val Verde USD didn't even follow their own bylaws and had their regular meetings on a first or third Tuesday. So it's not necessarily the city that is causing this. It's Val Verde, in which we heard tonight there was a conflict by a resident who spoke. It's Val Verde not adhering.
I think it's Moreno Valley.
No.
That the member of the public talked about Moreno Valley.
Moreno Valley has
Okay, well, according to the speaker at the podium, he said Val Verde. He didn't say Moreno Valley.
Yeah, there was a Val Verde meeting the same night as the council meeting. And that's just the day that you announce your retirement, so I couldn't be at
Okay.
both.
All
And
right.
then tonight, I also mentioned that right now, Moreno Valley Unified is having a meeting right now as well.
Okay, my mistake. My misunderstanding as to the speaker's comments at the podium tonight. But if you do look, barring my comment that their own calendar didn't have a meeting on October 10th, does not reflect the fact that they still didn't follow their own bylaws 10 out of the 12 months. When I look at Moreno Valley Unified School District, it's not in a nice monthly calendar. They do theirs in just sequential meetings in a list. So you're going to actually see two slides. So this is January through June. And it shows their study sessions and regular meetings and so forth. And then July through December. And it clearly states that their regular meetings are to be held on the second and fourth Tuesday of the month. Now, they're actually adhering to their bylaws, 9930 and 9931, in the sense that there's only been 1 out of 14 regular meetings in which Moreno Valley Unified School District didn't follow their bylaws. And it's actually the one that was on February 7th, and it's denoted by the fact that they had to move that due to a holiday or school schedule. When we look at our history of our regular meeting times, the resolution that we're currently codified under is 2015-71. And there must have been, unfortunately, I was not here in 2015, but there must have been some issues back then, because this actually is codification to move our meetings from what was the first or the second and fourth to the first and third. So predicated on what I'm assuming would have been conflicts with other jurisdiction and residents' comments, this particular board or governing body of the city had decided to specifically move the second and fourth to the first and third Tuesday, and that the time and place would be 6 o'clock. And so, in essence, this body has previously already corrected the issues with any potential conflicts from a regular meeting standpoint. When we look at the recommendations based on these findings that I discovered in doing this research over this past weekend, there is no change that is needed for our regular meetings. There appears to be some conflict with the study session, because our study session, if you recall, residents haven't made comments about any conflicts in meetings, one, because of the pandemic, and two, when we came out, two, prior to the pandemic, we weren't doing that many study sessions. Now that we're doing more study sessions, they're codified on the second Tuesday. That's the conflict. It is the study session, not our regular meetings, that are in conflict with, in essence, Moreno Valley Unified School District and the Val Verde Unified School District. So the recommendation here is potentially to change the day of this meeting, what would be the study session meeting, to the second Wednesday of each month at 6 p.m. Then there should be no conflict. Now, I will say there still will be potentially a conflict with Val Verde Unified School District, because there's 12 out of 14 times in which they're not following their own bylaws. So that would be my recommendation. The other thing that I just want to mention is that if for some reason council decides to direct staff to motion and to direct staff to modify the current day and time of the regular meeting and or the study session, staff would need to return to council with a staff report and a resolution to memorialize the motion change. Council would need to approve said resolution to implement the change, which will identify a future meeting that would take place in which the implementation would actually occur. I just want to remind council that currently agenda software, the agenda software would need to be modified to implement the administrative change, and we would need a few meetings to implement that. It's been a while since the change has occurred, since 2015. We're currently working with a legacy software right now, and we would need a few meetings to at least go through that and identify that there would be no errors with the boardroom or the agenda packet. But we are also currently going through, because it is a legacy software, we're currently going through City Clerk and Technology Services are engaged with a new software, agenda software provider. And that vendor is looking to migrate and implement the new system. So based on that, it would be our hope that we're looking at a future date in which, if there is a motion change, we can implement that possibly after the summer recess of next year. Because the software implementation and migration to the new software will take a while. And we want to have several meetings before we make any adjusted change to ensure that the software is working properly. So my recommendation would be, since it's not necessarily the regular meetings that are causing the conflict and it's the study session, that we look at something after summer recess. That way, staff, technology, services truly have a month to go through the software and ensure that the new implementation to a date would take place. With that, I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Brian. Appreciate the clarification there and doing that research. Thanks for putting the time in to compile all that information. And definitely see that you clearly identified that Val Verde is not adhering to their bylaws, as you said, and that's causing the issues with residents not being able to get to both meetings at times. So definitely would defer to staff's recommendations there. But I know we have council members who have maybe comments or questions. And first up, we have Mayor Pro Tem Delgado.
That was it. Actually, you just cleared it up. That's the problem is that a particular school board, Val Verde, is not adhering to their particular schedule. So say, for instance, we come back and we say, hey, Brian, our recommendation is to move it to the 2nd and 4th, back before 2015. They can say, well, now we're going to go back to 2nd and 4th like our bylaws say. They could literally do that because that's what their bylaws say, right? So we would be chasing our tail if we moved it. But then for everybody to attend both meetings and then they go back to their codified. Is that right?
You are correct. My hope would be that if for some reason there is a motion to change, what we would do, my recommendation would be to take this to the Joint Task Force to let them know that council has a motion for a change, and the next Joint Task Force is later this month, that we are working on a change, and if adopted, our change would be this. And we'd be putting them on notice through the Joint Task Force that, hey, we're making a modification here. Please make sure that your boards aren't modifying to the same date in which we're modifying, date and time. But again, their boards are completely separate and distinct from this particular governing body, and they could do whatever they want, just like you can do whatever you want.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Councilmember Santa Cruz.
I was here in 2015. I think I was sitting in the seat Patrick's sitting in. So I do remember this. And before 2015, we were sitting in Myrna Valley Unified's boardroom. And at that time, the talk was, we've always done it on 2nd and 4th Tuesdays. We're never going to change. We've always had it on 2nd and 4th Tuesday. That was what's coming out of the school district. That's what was coming out of the council chambers. So when my mom was in the school district, she tried to change it and was unsuccessful. So when she got here, having the support of her council, she was able to change it to the 1st and 3rd. And that went well for a few years, for many years, actually. But it's not working anymore. And don't think it's because they don't know. Our residents that have come and spoke to us, they've done that over there. I myself have gone over there and told them, you're meeting on the wrong day. This is not the day you're supposed to meet. I've met with the board members. I've sent them emails. I've brought it up in the task force. The fact is, we're in the same position we were in 2015. They're going to do what they want to do because they're an independent board, and we're going to need to do what we need to do because we're an independent board. So who are we serving? We're supposed to be serving the residents, the people who have elected us. And if these residents need to be at their school board on Tuesdays, whether it's the 1st and 3rd or the 2nd and 4th, we should support people who want to be engaged. They're asking us for this. We should look at moving our council meetings off the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and even the 4th Tuesdays. Can we look at Wednesdays? Can we look at Thursdays opposite Planning Commission? Can we look at something that will fix the problem? I realize we're not the ones making the problem, but can we fix it?
Next up is Councilmember Bernard.
So I'm gonna go in a little different direction than this. I see that we codified it in 2015, which was relatively, let's say roughly 7-8 years ago. I'm also coming from a place of a parent who has a child at Valverde, but I also feel like Valverde should be following their own guidelines, because I've been looking at the calendar and I found what Brian found, and I just wanted to make sure I was reading it correctly when I saw that at some point they just decided we're going to rotate what day this goes. I also think that while I understand that the public is coming here and we seem to be a little bit more receptive to changing the dates, I don't think we should always put it on the city council to come back and redo the dates when the board members from the other boards know that our dates are conflicting, and as recently as this last weekend have approached me like, hey, at your study session, go ahead and change your date, which is telling me they're not even going to look at it. They're going to look at us to change it. So then what happens when they decide, well, you know what, we're going to rotate to another day? Should we keep adjusting and bending to their will and being the only flexible ones? That's the point of the task force, to be like, hey, this is what we're going to do, because I don't want us to change it. And then everyone rotates it to something else. Because at the end of the day, I also look at it from, aside from that, we have all our other meetings that we have. So like we said, we have our planning commission. So if we were to move it to Thursday, we got to do it opposite of planning commission. If we move it to Wednesday, we also have our other boards and commissions that we have to do, that we have to rotate on our schedule. I personally, once I was reading some of the bylaws and figured it out, do feel like the others should be looking at it from their perspective of who do they serve also. We understand who we serve. I don't have a problem, but I also know that all of these other things have to change for that. We are asking them on both sides to change one meeting. Valverde has not adhered to it, and I can't even tell you when they flipped. And the only other conflict would have been Moreno Valley, which I'm like, okay, fine, we can move it to Wednesday, but what if they decide to change it to a Wednesday?
Yeah, and I agree that, I think it is definitely our duty to ensure access to these meetings. But again, as Brian and staff clearly identified, the issue is not the city. It is, in this case, Valverde not adhering to their own bylaws. I think definitely, at a minimum, they need to be doing that. Unfortunately, they're not. Just from me, I think council member from District 1 has further comment, but I definitely would agree with staff's recommendations that we keep our regular meetings as is, and the study sessions for the city council, that we look at moving those either to, there were two options on there, either move them to earlier, which actually is not my preference because that also would probably make it harder for folks to attend. I would definitely prefer moving our study sessions to Wednesdays at 6 p.m. I think that's probably the best way. So that would just be my recommendation, to keep our regular council meetings as is and move our study sessions to 6 p.m. on Wednesdays. And I think Councilmember Santa Cruz has further
There's one other board, a public education board that was also meeting on the 1st and 3rd, and that's our college board. Our college board also meets on the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays of each month. So I didn't see that listed, and our college board does meet that same day as well.
My apologies. For the residents that come up and speak, they've only ever mentioned Valverde Unified School District and Moreno Valley Unified School District. So in trying to accommodate their statements, that's the organizations or jurisdictions that I included.
Thank you. So at this time, would you like for us to give you some kind of direction or at least come to some kind of consensus on this?
I have a question.
Yes.
And this is probably just very going to sound off the wall. Do we need to schedule a special joint meeting with all 3 to 4 bodies and just come up with something so that we're all in the same room on an agreement?
Well, I'm
I
going-
will say that
I'm
the
going to
joint task force does
meetings.
meet bi-monthly or every other month.
And I've brought it up
And
there.
the superintendents do participate. They might not be at every meeting, but they have had this particular.
Not that way.
Oh, okay.
I mean, bringing all the boards together, as in the elected body, and we have a special joint meeting, just like they've done with the college board, and we all sit down and say, here are our dates, here's what we found, here's what you guys have, and we all come to a consensus at the meeting, because right now we're getting ready to play telephone. And maybe if everyone's in the same room and the public is able to have this discussion with all of them, everyone will see that it's not one person saying this and one person saying that. We're trying to come to a consensus. It's not unheard of.
Agreed. There is codification for special joint meetings within Policy 101A. So we do have specified processes to do so. If it's anything like the joint task force and the participation from the superintendent, I would highly doubt you'll get participation from the actual board members of those jurisdictions in which you would potentially call a joint meeting, even if they would agree to it. Somehow, some way, somebody just needs to force Valverde to adhere to their own bylaws.
And maybe somehow, some way, we call a joint task meeting and they don't show up, and we call them out there and we say, we tried to have this discussion and this is what we came up with. Because if they're non-responsive, if they don't show up, then at least we can say we've gone above and beyond to make sure that we've tried to address this and work this out together for the betterment of the community. But that's just me. Others may not feel the same.
Staff will take whatever direction we get from council in a motion and direction to potentially bring this back either in a joint meeting amongst all the jurisdictions and entities, or our own codification of resolution for any changes you may want to make.
So thank you, sir. It does worry me that they are not adhering to their own bylaws. And just like the council member Bernard said, that what's going to say, and the mayor said, what's going to prevent them from chasing our day? Nothing. If they're not adhering to the current time right now, what's going to make them chase our day, whatever day we move it to, or if we did? So there's no saying that. So I agree that we should meet with these folks and tell them, hey, this is throw out all the schedules and say they're good the way they are now. And I know there are some people don't agree with that they're good there right now, but they're not following theirs. We are.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that is definitely an option, and I know in the past I don't recall, at least not since the time I've been on the council, where we've had a joint meeting between 3 jurisdictions. I know we've had one that I actually participated in between the city of Moreno Valley and Moreno Valley Unified. That was a few years ago or several years ago. So I know it's an option, and I don't think there's anything preventing us from having a special meeting or a joint meeting with 3 jurisdictions. But and I don't mean to repeat what's been said, but while we can definitely do that, and I'm open to that. I don't think I have any objections to that. It also doesn't guarantee, like you said, even if they agree, it doesn't mean they're going to show up, or how many of the members are going to show up, or if there's going to be some kind of consensus. At a minimum, we can ask for the meeting, schedule it, assuming that they agree, because I think they have to agree to it as well to accept the meeting. We can at least try.
So there's basically 2 options now. Our next joint task force meeting amongst a lot of jurisdictions within the city and stakeholders within the city is coming up at the end of this month. We could ask the superintendents that are in attendance through 2 of the electeds that are on the dais that participate in that joint task force to see if they would be amenable to that, or through the city clerk and council office if that would be the motion, we would just go ahead and reach out to those boards and ask them for a joint special meeting. Either option would require a motion and a second to direct staff.
Thank you. And we have Councilmember Marquez as well.
I was gonna bring that up, Brian, about the task force. You beat me to it. But, yeah, that's something we should do to see how they feel about it, the superintendents. And if they agree, let them go ahead and talk to their staff and their trustees and go from there. Or the other option we have is our study sessions should stay at Tuesdays, but at 7 o'clock. They don't last that long anyways. So we start at 7 o'clock, we'll be out of here by 7:30, quarter to 8 o'clock. So we don't have to change, we're just changing the time. And gives them enough time, an hour before, to go to the school boards. Something like that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, at a minimum, we should definitely bring this up officially at the joint task force meeting, and I believe our representatives are Councilmember Marquez and Councilmember Santa Cruz. At a minimum, that's something that should be discussed at those joint task force meetings officially. And maybe, I don't think there's anything preventing Valverde Unified and MVUSD from having two of their electeds at that joint task force meeting. Of course, anything above and beyond would be a Brown Act issue. But that would be, for sure, I think, a minimum, step one. And then if nothing productive comes out of that, then we can try calling for a joint meeting between the three jurisdictions. I definitely am on board with that.
Just to confirm, we are currently creating the agenda for the joint task force meeting at the end of this month or later this month. We are still trying to reach out and get a hold of the acting superintendent for Moreno Valley Unified School District, Mr. Verde, and we've been unsuccessful. Typically, the superintendents are invited and do attend occasionally for the joint task force meeting. Usually, the electeds do not attend that meeting. So I just want to make sure that that's the understanding and that staff would be agendizing this item to discuss with the superintendents in attendance, not necessarily the actual electeds.
Also, since we're talking about the school boards, as one of my colleagues mentioned about the college, they do attend our task force, and we can invite them, because if there's conflicting days, maybe they have better ideas, who knows? So that's something we should look at also.
Agreed.
Okay, so I believe that there's consensus to add an item to the joint task force meeting agenda to discuss this particular topic. And if I'm understanding correctly here, if nothing comes out of that, if superintendents don't attend the meeting for the joint task force, or just nothing productive comes out of that, then we can move forward with exploring that joint meeting between the three jurisdictions.
So, Mayor, Council, that will be fine. Staff will go ahead and put this on the agenda for the joint task force. But I just need a motion in order to have that for record, along with a second to be directed to do so, because what I'm hearing is if they do not show or it's not productive, that we already have the ability to move forward in a joint special meeting.
I'll make that motion, as per our CFO.
Okay, so for the record, we will go ahead and agendize on the joint task force to work with the superintendents of the two school districts to try and figure out a reasonable approach. And if that is if that's not successful, we'll move forward. Staff will go ahead, city clerk, council staff will reach out to not only Valverde, Moreno Valley, but the College Board, and try and create a date for a joint special meeting.
Sounds good. So there's a motion by Councilmember Marquez, and I'll second that motion. Do we need to take an official vote, or does that suffice?
No, we don't need an actual vote. We just need a first and second based on ordinance 996. And so what we will do is, at the conclusion of this conversation, the study session will end. Staff will then go based on motion and directive to further those agendas.
Thank you very much. Okay. Appreciate it. Once again, staff, thank you to my colleagues here. And with that, we can go ahead and move to adjourn today's meeting at 6:57 p.m. Thank you.